Hello and welcome to the next in the series of the Toolkits program. Lots of familiar faces on here today, but I'm going to just before I tell you what we're covering, we're going to loiter on this slide while I come to Robin to talk a little bit through, for anyone who hasn't heard this before, why this series was created. We did a pilot. This is our third iteration and it keeps evolving. I was saying to Jules, every time we talk about AI, it's changed and the conversations are changing and what actually everybody needs from this series is evolving. But Robin, why did we start doing this in the first place?
Why indeed. And after I finish talking, I will find the link for this and put it in the chat as well. So
We'll share the URL. Yes.
for those without a QR code. So I think so I work at the University of Bristol. Typically that's in commercialization, but we see a whole raft of projects coming out of research looking to do impact, and it might be policy or public engagement, or developing lots of different things. So Lucy and I have always been talking about how do we find new ways to support those projects in an interesting and kind of novel way. And fortunately, Aspect has been willing now for some time to keep sponsoring us to find great speakers to sort of bring along. Um, and generally, the start point is we might be able to find funding to do work and to help progress the project. But often, a lot of the initial work has to be done by ourselves. And new tools that are coming on board are just opening up a whole raft of possibilities. And
Mm.
that's why it's quite an exciting area to kind of explore today.
And I think that empowering you to be confident and explore and get started. 'Cause I think sometimes we did video last time. It can feel like a huge task, a huge project, and just getting going. And we've done a couple of AI sessions already, which lead really nicely into today. And Jules is working every day with agencies, challenging him on what these tools can really do, and also working with universities, as he'll mention. So, have you all scanned the QR code? Have you all got the URL, which Robin's about to put in the chat? Get your micro credentials. Might as well make the most of that. This is what we've had in our schedule for this series. So AI tools, we start off with Blue, looking at Gamma and at Chat and at SciSpace, very practical, functional, getting head around those tools and how you might use them. And we were all busy actually pulling up our URLs and having a go, which was great fun. The project communication and planning was with Joyanne. We did quite a lot on Notebook LMS and about how you can use those tools to make your life easier. Because Robin said you might be doing this around, your full-time academic role. So how can we use technology to just give you more headspace and move things forward without feeling overwhelmed? I'm one day a week, for example, at the University of Bath, and I'm just on a call with my colleagues. It zooms by. It feels like we're never moving forward. So how can we use these tools to move forward? The wonderful April feedback to insight, looking at all the data we collect through our projects and how we use those. Ross with video storytelling was earlier this week, and those 4 videos are now on the YouTube channel. So if you'd like to watch any of those back, if you missed any of them, there's quite a lot of information. Please do watch those back, as this one will be probably tomorrow morning. I'm not going to do it this afternoon. And coming up next Thursday is the last of the series, which is immersive technologies, which is AR, VR, XR. And we're going to be starting from literally what are they, moving through to how can you use them with a couple of examples of kind of the practical storytelling that those technologies can bring a bit over and beyond websites and videos. So lots of great stuff coming up. And that's the preamble. Jules, good to see you.
Hi, nice to be back.
It's been a while. Obviously, we were just saying before we went live, in the 6 months since we last had a conversation, you're saying about, well, what do I need to do on my presentation? Well, actually, technology is going to be doing it for you because so much will have changed.
Yeah. Well, I wish it was doing my presentation for me. It's not quite there yet, but
No, it hasn't replaced
definitely
us
has
yet.
definitely has changed a bit. Yeah.
And just for anybody who's new on this session, please put questions in chat as we go along. I'm here to be Jules' wing woman. I'll be reading the chat, asking questions. He's probably going to ask you some questions too. This is interactive as it can be. We make it webinar style because we want to create good content for YouTube. But please do talk to us as well. We like to hear from you. Over to you, Jules.
Great. I'm going to share my screen. I'm just seeing Zoom's giving me a little option to appear in the corner whilst I talk. So I'm going to try that. Tell me if this looks like a good idea or not.
Yeah, that looks all
Good.
right.
You can see my
Yeah,
little talking head.
yeah,
There you go. I wonder if there's some AI going on there.
I think so.
Anyway, welcome everybody. Yeah, my name's Jules Love. I'm going to be talking a little bit about how you can use AI tools creatively to help your projects and research have a bit more impact, or help you achieve a bit more impact. So first of all, a little bit about me. I am the co-founder of a business called Spark AI, and we help organizations build AI capabilities in their teams through training, through coaching, and through consultancy. And we mainly work with marketing and advertising and creative businesses. But we have also worked with some universities, most recently with the University of West of England, where we've helped their business transformation team get up to speed with Copilot for everything from project management to internal communications and even marketing. So, but a little bit about me. Why should you listen to what I've got to say about this stuff? Well, my background is in marketing and then photography. I was an advertising photographer for 15 years. And then I went down the AI rabbit hole during COVID when we all had a lot of time on our hands, and ended up studying applied generative AI at MIT on a remote program. And then since then, I've gone on to found Spark. We've now worked with over 60 organizations. I've been nominated one of the 100 most influential people in digital and tech by the British Interactive Media Association, which was very nice of them. I lecture at Oxford University Said Business School on AI strategy. And earlier this month, my book, Shift, came out, which is all about how to AI enable your organization. So if you have a little search for Shift, AI for agencies on Amazon, you can get a copy of that on Kindle.
And congratulations for writing a book, because that's hard.
Yeah, and at the last section of the book says how I used AI to help me write the book. There you go, cheat code included. Great. So what are we going to talk a little bit about today over the next hour or so? Well, we're going to explain how to talk AI. So, it is English, but a little bit different perhaps to the way you're used to using it. How can you use this stuff to help you with your research? How can you use this stuff to reframe your research and present your ideas in ways that make them more accessible to different audiences? How can you communicate these things visually as well? And where all this might be going. And we'll have time for questions along the way and also at the end. So I can't see the chat box whilst I'm presenting. So Lucy's going to keep an eye on the chat box and let me know if any of you have got any questions as we go.
Absolutely. You're quite used to me interrupting you on these sessions, so all good.
Good. Great. So first of all, though, it'd be great to learn a little bit about you all on the webinar today. You can, if you scan in that QR code with your phone, or you can go to slido.com and type in the number 3495 108 and tell me a little bit about the kind of things you're using generative AI tools for at the moment. So it'd be great to understand where we're already at, and I don't tell you things that you already know.
You might need to move your head over, because at the moment you're in front of the number.
Okay. Don't know how I do that. Maybe I need to change my.
So it's 3495
108.
Cool.
I forgot that my head was showing. I have to watch myself. But we've got 8 participants typing now, so there's stuff coming up. Okay, so what are we using AI for? We're using it for content. I imagine that means creating content. We've got proofreading. That's a great use of it. Reducing word count. Yep, anyone who's had to do a grant submission knows all about reducing word count and paraphrasing. Shortening and summarizing. Yep. Lots of social media popping up. Yep, I definitely see that in my LinkedIn feed. Lots of AI written content. So we'll talk a little bit about how to make your content not seem AI written. Communicating research outputs. Great. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So it'd be great if you could chip in with how you've been using it there as well. Proofreading my English. Yeah, so proofreading text, even for native English speakers, it's very helpful for that. And for those of you for whom English is a second language, then it's great to help get your text a little bit more fluent and natural, perhaps. Formatting tables, yeah, some of those boring things that are a bit fiddly to do. Great. Summarizing a lot, I can see. Demography, that's a pretty advanced use of it, I would think. So well done, whoever's using this for demography. I did demography, I did part of my degree was in demography a long time ago. Sentiment analysis from interviews, great use of it. Yeah. So we've got some quite interesting uses here. So I can see how that would be useful in a research context when if you've interviewed lots of people and you want to mine those interviews to find general trends, then tools like Notebook LM that we're going to look at a little bit later are very good at that kind of thing. Great, thank you everybody. That's a really rich set of stuff still
I think
coming in.
I can relate to most of those as well.
Yeah, I love the person who's just written everything. Welcome to my world, because I also use these tools for pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Translating complex ideas, great use of it as well. Yeah, and we'll look a little bit at that later. Okay. Oh, great. Well, thanks for sharing, everybody. Some great uses there. Qualitative analysis, yeah, great. They're actually quite good for quantitative analysis as well, for those of you that use numerical data. And yeah, lots of good stuff there. Great. Well, let's see if we can help you build on some of those things with what we're going to cover now. Thanks, everyone. So it's worth spending a moment just to understand what's going on behind something like ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini, so that you understand the kind of tasks it's good for and the kind of tasks it's perhaps less good for. So for those of you that do genuinely understand machine learning, please accept this as a very layperson's explanation for those of you that aren't data scientists and machine learning people. But when we talk about AI, there's a lot of stuff bundled under the thing called AI. So AI in many forms has been around since the 1950s, since the dawn of computing, really. But up until now, up until recently, AI focused on two things. One was being able to predict things. So predict, in this case, what show you might want to watch next if you're looking at Prime Video, or classically, what the next move in a chess game might be. If you remember, Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov back in 1997 as a triumph of kind of predictive AI. The other kind of AI that we've seen quite a lot of over the last 20 years or so, I suppose, is classificative AI. So it can look at something and decide what category it should fit into. So we've seen this a lot with image recognition. So is this a picture of a dog or a cat or a car or a house? That's what powers all of those capture, prove you're a human things that you see on the web. And then finally, over the last few years, at least only the last few years in the public domain, we've seen generative AI. And generative AI is the kind of AI that sort of creates new stuff. So we've seen AI as machine vision. So there we go. If you drive a Tesla, then there's got machine vision built in, and these robo taxis that are driving around San Francisco and Austin, Texas, are all relying on, that is a kind of AI. If your weather app on your phone is using AI, that's predictive AI again. It's using data about the past to try and predict what's going to happen in the future. But generative AI is the new kid on the block, and what we're going to be talking about today. So generative AI is, well, I asked ChatGPT what it was, because I thought if anybody knows, Chat should, and it does. So it gave a really helpful definition here. It said, generative AI creates new content, like text or images, by learning patterns from existing data, simulating human creativity and decision-making. And the key word in that sentence is simulating. These are giant statistical models that try and imitate the way that humans think. Now, how have they managed to do that, you might think? Well, every computer program you've interacted with in the past, up until the last few years, worked according to this top row. Somebody wrote the rules of that computer program, and you give it an input, the computer program applies the rule and gives you an output. So it might be something very, very simple, like a simple calculation, or it could be something very complicated, like rotating an image in Photoshop, and every pixel needs to be mapped onto its destination pixel. Quite a complex routine to go through. But crucially, a human or team of humans decided what those rules were. And secondly, when you ask that question or ask the software to do that thing, it will do it the same way every time. If you ask for Photoshop to rotate a picture 90 degrees, it always rotates it 90 degrees. It doesn't sometimes do 89, it doesn't sometimes do 91. Generative AI is very different. It's a branch of machine learning, and all of these AI tools are a branch of machine learning these days. And what does that mean? Well, it means we've given it the input and the outputs. So in
We're
the
going to have
case
to
of,
take your head off, Jules. We've got your head on the middle of the outputs and the
okay,
inputs.
I'm gonna reshare my screen without my head.
It was such a good idea. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I thought it might make it a bit more engaging, but it's probably just better if you don't see my head. So let's try that again.
There we go. Lovely.
Are we now headless?
Yes.
Great. I'm just an omnipotent talking voice.
That's
Um,
good.
so with machine learning, what we've done is we've basically given it the question and the answer and asked it to work out the rules. And how's that actually working in practice? So the internet has basically been fed into a model, one sentence at a time, every piece of text on the internet, and they feed in one sentence at a time, removing one word from the sentence and leaving a blank. And the machine has to guess what the blank might have been. And then because we have the actual sentence, you can compare it against what the actual sentence actually was. And the model then refines itself to be better at predicting what that missing word was. If you do that a gazillion times on every sentence on the internet, your model gets pretty good. And these models end up with rules that are so complex, no human could have ever written them. And in fact, no human can really understand them. Even the people that build these models don't fully understand all the calculations that are going on inside them. But they have become very good at simulating the way humans speak and write and create images even, and other things. And that's kind of how they've done it. Now, we call these things artificial intelligence, but it can be a bit misleading because they're not intelligent in the way that you or I are. They're very, very good at some things. They could read a PDF of my book in 5 seconds when it would take you 5 hours, but they can get things that we find quite trivial wrong. So they have a very sort of jagged form of intelligence where some things they seem almost superhuman and other things they seem remarkably naive or stupid. So it can be helpful to think of it as algorithmic intelligence, I think. They're giant calculating machines. And that has some implication for how you use these things. Who's heard of the word hallucinations when it comes to these AI models? It's a word that's often used when they get things wrong or confused. Often they get things muddled up and merge two sources that shouldn't have been merged, or start a sentence from one place and finish it from another place in a way that's inaccurate or misleading. Now, what I want you to take on board is the fact that these calculating machines are always hallucinating. They are always calculating the answer. They're always guessing the answer. And just that if you use them for tasks where that's helpful, they're really useful. If you use them for tasks where that is a problem, then they're really poor. So it's their biggest superpower. They're actually quite creative and imaginative, but it is also their greatest weakness if you're trying to use these things for the wrong kinds of tasks.
And we talked about this with Joyanne. They're like a puppy. She has the narrative AI is like a puppy. It wants to please you. So it'll often hallucinate to try and give you the answer you want rather than giving the facts. I've had that when I've put transcripts through and it'll give me the most amazing quote. I'm like, did they really say that? Well, no, it didn't. They didn't say that, but that's what I thought. That was a quote I found for you because I thought that's what you wanted to hear.
Exactly. That's a great example of how these things can hallucinate. So what does that mean for the kinds of tasks you use them for? Well, for the last 20 years, when you've been faced with a web browser that's blank with just a text box on it, it's been Google, and we've all got very used to using Google. But Google's a very different kettle of fish. What's going on with Google? It's a deterministic database query. So deterministic meaning if you ask the same question twice, you'll get exactly the same output. And a database query means it's looking up the answer. So it looks up in its index of every website in the world, and then it gives you a list of links of websites it thinks probably answer your question. And you get to look at those links. You get to decide which one is a good answer for you. You get to decide which sources you trust. And if Google can't find a match, it'll tell you that there isn't a match. So with Google, it's fairly transparent what's going on. Obviously, people try and game the system with search engine optimization and advertising and things like that. But at its heart, Google is fairly transparent. Large language models, which is the collective term for tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, and Copilot, work in a very different way. They are non-deterministic. If you ask the same question twice, you'll get a slightly different answer each time because it's calculating the answer differently each time. And they are pattern matchers. So they're not looking up the answer, they're calculating it or guessing it. And so they will always give you quite a confident answer and not necessarily a right answer. And you don't really know where it got that answer from often. So you don't know whether it was a reputable source or whether that's the right way to think about a problem or not.
And we've done this on Blue sessions. We all put the same prompts into ChatGPT. So exactly what you're saying, Jules. We were looking for grants. This was not the last session, the one before. And we all put the same prompt in and we all got different grant answers. There was a few like Innovate that were in there. But it is worth having a conversation, isn't it? And exploring the options and where they found and providing evidence. Because, yeah, we did that as a mass group and it was fascinating.
Great example, Lucy. So, so large language models, you don't use them for the same things that you would use a search engine for as a rule. So things where there is only one way to give a correct answer, large language models are a poor tool. They don't work very well at that kind of thing. If you are asking to understand, if you want to understand who sits on a university's board and you want a list of the 15 people that sit on that board and their job titles, a large language model won't do a very good job of that. It will probably give you a partial answer. It won't identify everybody, like your grant example. And it might even muddle some things up and give you the name of somebody who sits on a different university board, who perhaps previously sat on your university board.
And that's how I thought they were used. I think that's what we all fell into at the beginning. We thought, oh, this is like a new Google, because people were saying that LMMs were going to replace Google. So we thought that's what they were. So I remember at the beginning asking it the wrong questions and getting really annoyed. Because you're right, it'll go, well, this person might be useful, because if it can't find everything, and you have to go back and say, well, have you actually looked on the university's website? Oh, no, I hadn't thought about that, or whatever. It doesn't have the same logic.
Exactly that. So as a rule of thumb, if what you're searching for is a fact, and there is only one version of that fact which is true, then you're probably better off still using Google for that kind of thing. Which grants are available to me? What are the assessment criteria for that grant? Those kinds of things, Google is still your friend. Large language models, however, can do things that no search engine can do. They can simulate thinking, and that makes them very, very powerful in situations where you want another opinion about something. You want another voice in the room to help you think through a problem, or you want a little assistant that can help you get to a good answer. And that's the kind of thing that large language models are really, really good at, when there's lots of different ways to be helpful. So think about it like that. What are the kind of tasks you do where there's lots of different ways to give a helpful answer and not just one way to be correct? So in some of the examples that we saw earlier when you were telling us how you were using AI tools, things like helping me make my research accessible to a different audience, then that's a great use of it. Any one word is probably not a big issue as long as the general thrust of the argument is okay. And that's a great use of a large language model. It might give you lots of different ways that you could explain your research to people who aren't specialists. But it might get it completely wrong if you actually asked it to do a calculation that was part of your research and you were wanting a single answer that was correct. So this concept is super, super important to using AI for your work. So I hope I haven't labored the point, but it's really important to understand the kind of tasks they're helpful at and the kind of tasks that they can be misleading at. So just remember, they're always guessing the answer. And then another question that we often get is like, well, what tool should I be using? There seem to be thousands out there, and which one's the best and all the rest of it. Sorry, this slide's a little bit out of date. This goes to show exactly how fast all this stuff moves. This slide is from when we presented this 6 months ago, and look what's changed already. So the three major language models that you will come across are ChatGPT, that's made by OpenAI, and since 03, we've had ChatGPT 5, and now we've had ChatGPT 5.1. So we've had 2 releases in the last 6 months. And Copilot Microsoft Copilot uses ChatGPT in the background. We've had Anthropic. They have a model called Claude that's very powerful as well. And in fact, the latest version of that is 4.7. And Google have Gemini Pro. And in fact, they just released Gemini 3 last week. So that one's only been out of date a week. Apologies for that. And those are the three models that you will generally come across. There are some others, but the three that you'll typically come across in a normal work environment are going to be these three. And they're all good. They're all getting better all the time. And it really doesn't matter which one you use. Just take the one you've got access to and start using it and getting fluent with it would be my recommendation.
I think a lot of universities, I've got Copilot, and also that means that the information stays with the institution, I think.
So data privacy is important with these things. Generally speaking, you need to be on a paid plan to have any kind of data privacy. If you're using the free version of ChatGPT, then your prompt, any data that you've pasted in or uploaded, and the output of your prompt is all going to get used for the next version of OpenAI's model for training it to be better. If you're using ChatGPT on a business or enterprise account, or you're using it through Microsoft Copilot, then your data is secure. With Google, if you're using it as part of a paid Google Workspace account, then your data is secure. If you're using it as a punter through your Gmail account, then it is not. So again, you get what you pay for with these things. The free versions of these tools really are just demos. If you're using these things for work, then highly recommend that you use a paid version. If you've got access to Copilot, that's a great place to start. So I'd love to know what tools you are all using. So we've touched on the three most common ones out there, but there's thousands, as I mentioned. So let me know.
Right, more work. Right, getting on Slido.com. Let's do this. There's an AI for that website we looked at on one of the earlier sessions, and it's ridiculous, isn't it? There was just thousands of icons.
Yeah, there's an AI for that now, has about 40,000 tools registered on it, I think. But the reality is most of those tools are built on top of one of those models we just looked at. And a lot of the techniques those tools do, you can do yourself if you're just a little bit skilled at using them. So what are we seeing? ChatGPT and Claude coming up. Yep, seeing chat. Microsoft Word. Yep, I mean, it has some Copilot elements built into it now. So kind of counts as an AI tool these days. Canva also has lots of AI tools built into it. Perplexity tries to kind of blend a search engine and a large language model together reasonably successfully. Jamie AI, I haven't come across before. So would love to know in the chat a little bit about Jamie AI. ChatGPT and other GPTs within it. Yes, so within ChatGPT, you can create things called custom GPTs and publish them for other people to use. So there are some helpful ones, some helpful sort of public ones out there.
I use
Gamma,
Monday.
we're seeing come up quite a lot.
Gamma's great.
Yeah,
I use Monday in ChatGPT. There's an instance built by the OpenAI engineers called Monday, which is a slightly sarcastic. It's a personality experiment, but I really like it because it has the right voice for me.
Great.
So yeah, I think it's good to have fun with some of those.
Yeah, we're seeing Gamma being quite popular. So Gamma helps you write slide decks. Napkin
makes them look beautiful.
Yeah, Napkin helps you write helps you create little infographics.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, in fact, well, what I'd say is Gemini 3 now, Google's Gemini 3 is actually getting very, very good at doing that itself now.
Cool.
So Napkin might be quaking in their boots a little bit. And we've seen Synthesia. So they create AI avatars, so sort of virtual humans that can deliver sort of video presentations and things like that. It's becoming very popular in the training space. Great British AI success story. They employ about 400 people here in the UK. And SciSpace, I've not come across SciSpace before, but I understand it's a tool for academics to help look up research papers and things like that. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. And when we looked at it with Blue a couple of weeks ago, it had changed, saying about the front end changes, the complexity of what you could do within it had evolved even from last time he'd looked at it.
Great.
They're always adding more functionality. So I think this is it. Every time you go in, they are, but they're always listening and always observing what we do, aren't they, on all these platforms? And you say chat keeps on evolving. And some days I find it seems less good than others. And I wonder if that's a day when they're doing updates. But yeah, you can almost feel it growing with you.
Yeah, I mean they're rolling out updates to chat every couple of months now. We saw 5.1 come out just a week or two ago. So yeah, clearly we can see ChatGPT is still the most popular one there, but with Copilot, Gamma, and SciSpace not far behind. Great, thanks for sharing, everyone. So how do you
This is the
use...
loaded question. Do we use it well?
Well, yeah, I'm sure some of you are using it well. For those of you that are still perhaps scratching the surface with it, this will be a little bit of a guide to how to get a bit more out of it. So I call it controlling the chaos. And why? Because these tools can create anything, really. The challenge is getting them to create the thing you actually want. And there's three ways you can do that. One is to engage your brain and think. And as academics, I hope you're very good at that. Two is to learn to prompt well, and we'll dive into that. And three, inform them, use data the right way. So what do I mean by all of those things? First of all, thinking. So before you touch your AI tool to help you do something, before you go into Copilot or chat, think about what it is you're really trying to do. Two reasons. One, because once you have answers coming back from an AI, it's hard to think about anything else. They blind you to other options. Secondly, you need to think about the task you're actually asking it to do, because being precise with what you're asking is the secret to getting the power out of these models. And then when it gives you an output, you need to engage, you need to think again, you need to actually engage with what it's given you and understand, is it useful? Is it taking you in the right direction? Is it being helpful? And certainly we find with a lot of the organizations we work with, a lot of people skip the thinking part a little bit and they think the AI is going to do the thinking for them. Think about your AI tool as being an opinionated assistant that helps you get stuff done. And you get to choose whether its opinion is one that you agree with or not. And it's there to help you get stuff done. It won't do it all for you. So that's really important. Let's talk about prompting. So Andrej Karpathy is one of the founders of OpenAI. And shortly after the release of ChatGPT, back when it was still Twitter, he tweeted, "The hottest new programming language is English." And so the great news is you all speak English, so you've got the potential to be brilliant programmers. But the challenge is that you do need to use English a little bit like a programming language to get the best out of these tools. What do I mean by that? Well, there's a few things that go into a good prompt. If you're just doing a very simple task, you don't need to think too hard about it. If you just want to redraft an email with a slightly friendlier tone of voice, go ahead, just type that in and it'll do a pretty good job of it. But the moment you try and use these tools to do slightly more complex tasks, like help you draft the response to a grant proposal, for example, you need to be quite specific about how you instruct them. And there are lots of frameworks out there. This is one that we use because it's easy to remember. They all basically do the same thing, try to get you to structure the way that you think about how you talk. We use this one, context, instructions, constraints, and inputs. We call it Cheeky, CICI, and it's easy to remember. So, context. Who is, give the AI a role. Think about who would be the perfect assistant to help you with this task and ask the AI to assume that role. So if you're filling out a grant application, ask them to be a brilliant grant application writer with knowledge of the grant writing process and the assessment criteria or something like that. And give it context of what you're doing. Explain to it that, I'm a researcher applying for a grant to fund this aspect of my research.
And that's the bit, it's really easy to skip, isn't it? Because that's the bit, and every time I do remember to do that bit, it's much better because I have to start with, you are my editorial assistant. We are writing a LinkedIn post around quantum and I always get better results, but it's easy to just get into telling them what to do. But we've talked about treating it like a very enthusiastic intern.
Yeah.
You can't just say, write a post, it doesn't work.
Yeah, they're an opinionated assistant. So if you had to brief your assistant, what would you need to brief them with? You'd need to tell them what they were doing.
We all need context. We all need to know why.
Yeah. And then the next thing we do is give it the instructions. So what is the task? And so you might say, well, draft an answer to my grant proposal. But actually, you need to split that task out and explain, think about how you would go about the task and put those steps into your instructions. Imagine again that, just to Lucy's point, that you're instructing, the intern or the assistant. What would you ask it to do? You're going to say to it, read the grant application, take the first question, understand the criteria for a set, for that question, then help me find in my grant proposal, help me find the elements that meet those criteria and draft them into a paragraph of, or whatever. You're going to give it quite specific instructions like that. If you just say, write an answer to question 3, you'll generally get something that's not as good. Constraints. So this is where you tell it what the output needs to look like. So this might be where you tell it, first of all, the word count. I've got 300 words. I need to fit this answer within 300 words. The answer should demonstrate how my research meets these criteria, and the language should be friendly yet professional, or whatever you would like it to be. And then finally, what are the inputs? What's the data you're going to have to give it to be able to do this job? And by data, I mean all sorts of documents and things. So it's going to need the grant proposal form. So it's going to understand the questions. It's going to need to know about your research, so it knows what you're trying to do. And you're going to have to tell it what those things are. You're going to have to tell it this document is that thing, that document is this other thing, and it's going to need to know that. So that's how you write a good prompt. So good prompts for complex tasks can get quite long, and that's really important. So don't be afraid of these things getting quite long. There we go. Imagine you're talking to a very intelligent intern and their very first day of work. That's how you need to think about these things. So I don't really like the word prompting because it makes it all sound pretty quick. I much prefer briefing. And then thinking that, again, unlike Google, these tools are highly interactive. When they give you an answer back, that's the start of a conversation. It's not just, you don't just get an answer back and decide whether it's any good or not. You actually have a conversation with them.
And they ask you for feedback. So when you put something into chat, they'll say, well, do you want me to make it briefer? Do you want me to change the tone? They always finish every result with fine-tuning asks.
Yeah. So sometimes those questions can take you off topic. So don't get too carried away. Make sure it's going, this is the thinking part. Make sure it's taking you in the direction you want to go. But having that conversation is really important. And then finally, this bit about giving it data. So we're used to thinking of data as stuff that sits in spreadsheets or databases, because traditionally that's the stuff that's been machine readable. Well, now most things are machine readable. Gemini is probably the best at this right now, but they're all pretty good. They're multimodal. They can understand audio files. They can read pictures. They can watch videos. You can give them email threads. You can give them reports. You can give them transcripts of interviews. You can give them websites. You can even photograph your notebook, upload it, and it'll have a pretty good go at reading your handwriting or your diagrams and sketches. So all of this stuff now becomes context that you can give the AI. Don't give it everything, only give it stuff that's relevant to the task, but it means, or think about the context you'd need to give to the intern if they were going to have a good stab at doing the work for you.
It's also a really good excuse to pull all the data together that you have. Because I know I've done this with whiteboards, when you've done whiteboarding sessions, they can read those as well. But it's a good excuse to just think, right, what are all the pieces I have?
Yeah, the whiteboarding one's a great one. So yeah, you've just done a brainstorm with your team, photograph the right whiteboard, upload it to Chat or Copilot. It'll do a pretty good job of writing it up for you.
Again, and you've got to give it the context of what that is, as you would your enthusiastic intern. It's kind of, you can't just go, you've got to give it context what all these things are. So and I quite like talking them through the pieces as I add them. So now I'm going to add you the whiteboard of the meeting we had with the client on the 24th, which covers this. And now I'm going to add the documents, which is my background thinking on this grant. So again, tell them what all the pieces are, because if you just throw everything in without any context, it has a lot of information but no guidance.
Exactly that. Yeah. Which document is which, and like what's its purpose? Really helpful way to think about it. The other thing, by the way, I mentioned, and we've mentioned that they're useful for if you've done focus groups or interviews as part of your research. that you can use the transcripts of those interviews as data. The other thing as well is if you're having brainstorming sessions with your team, don't just use these for external things, use them for your internal sessions as well. That context is really helpful. So if you have been doing a whiteboarding session, record the transcript as well and give it that as part of the context, because there'll be lots of information and nuance in your conversation.
I forgot to put Fireflies on my list because, yeah, I use Fireflies. Obviously, there's Granola. Teams you can record, can't you? Your Teams meetings.
That's right.
I find it incredibly useful. And the transcripts, you mentioned that. I'm running a program with Bath Spa. We recorded all the interviews we did with the attendees before they came along, so we can now help guide the structure of the program based upon those interviews. And we did a little bit of that with April. It's like, just grab data. Whereas we used to be maybe overwhelmed with it, we can use these tools to make sense and use them for much richer conversations. But yeah, we at TechSpark, we record our team meetings every morning. If you can't make it, you get a little bit of a synopsis of what everyone's working on. It's lovely.
Great. Lucy, I can't see the chat. Have we had any questions come in?
We have not.
Great.
Annie asked about the link for a Tech Register, so I've just done that. So no, we've got some admin chat, but no questions about prompting.
Great. We'll plow on then. So, okay, so what are a few things that you can use these tools for that might be helpful in an academic context for your work? Well, the first one is using it for researching things. Now, most of you are using ChatGPT, so we'll have a quick look at what's going on in ChatGPT. Tell me, Lucy, if people have covered this in previous sessions, and I will skip over this very quickly. Have people had a quick tour of what's really going on around the ChatGPT interface or not?
No, what we did with Blue is we got stuck into just doing some prompts and getting some sort of feedback. So we didn't really delve into the interfaces, all the functionality. We didn't really touch that at all.
Okay, great. Well, let's do that then, because there's a little bit of unlocking here to get some of the power out of this stuff.
Cool.
The most important thing you can do is up here, you can choose what model ChatGPT is using. And you can do this in Copilot too. You can choose whether to turn on ChatGPT 5. If you're using ChatGPT, you've got some choices here. I'm on a business plan, by the way. So you should be on a paid account if you're using this stuff for work. And then you'll get options like this. So the default behavior is what is automatic. And what that means is ChatGPT will choose which model it thinks is most appropriate to answer your question. Because really there's three models going on in the background. There's instant, there's thinking, and there's pro. So instant gives you very quick responses, like the clue is in the name, but it's thinking less hard. So they're fine if you're just redrafting an email or you just want a quick, 5 ways to express an idea. But if you want it to think quite hard, you've got to turn on thinking mode and use ChatGPT thinking. Now, if you're using thinking, it might take 30 seconds or even a minute to come back with an answer, but you'll get something that's much well thought through, probably gone to the internet to check its sources, and it'll be less likely to hallucinate and generally will give you a much better answer. When you've got really complex problems or you want it to actually analyze data and produce a spreadsheet or a slide deck as its output, then you want to turn on Pro. And you get a limited number of uses per Pro, depending on which plan you're on. But picking which model is important.
And this is quite new, isn't it? This is
so
quite
most
a new
people never
relationship.
most people never pick which model they're on. And so
Yeah.
you'll end up with instant a lot of the time, and its answers just aren't as good.
And do they limit Pro because of the amount of processing power it takes?
Yeah, it's expensive for them to run it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Then over here, on the side here, you've got GPTs. So somebody mentioned that they were using them earlier. So these are where you can create little assistants that help you with specific tasks. They're a bit beyond what we're going to cover today, but something that is very helpful that you should all be using is projects. And when you create a project, if we click into a project, you get to call it something. So let's call it, I'm going to call it My Research. Never type live on a webinar. There we go. We're going to create that project. And when you create a project, you get to store some documents in there, and you can sort of interrogate those documents. So it's a really good way to sort of be able to chat with give the AI some context, and it'll then so you can see here I've got a little add files button. I can upload some files there. It might be your research proposal, or it might be a paper that you've written, or whatever it might be. I think it can take up to 20 PDF documents, and you can interrogate things there. So definitely use projects. They're a very powerful way to work. And you can share projects. If you're on a business account, you can share projects with your colleagues. Here you go. You've got a little share button up here. The other thing you can do, if we just go back to the regular chat, is you can connect other things to ChatGPT. So you can connect to Google Drive, you can connect your OneDrive or SharePoint if you're in a Microsoft environment. So you can see with mine, it's called company knowledge. I have my Google Drive connected, and that means you can ask it to search internally, not go and search the internet. So you could say, find me, ... the grant proposal for that thing that I did 3 years ago, and it'll dig it up for you.
We have a question. If you could choose one AI tool to do research, e.g. simulation, like grants related, etc., which one would you choose, with the constraint being budget? I mean, chat is £18.83 was my bill this month for my version of chat. So I pay for it because I know that 18.83 is a very small amount for me, given the results it delivers. I mean, and I don't know if you're part of a university, if you have Copilot within the university, that I would probably go for what you have if you have tools, in
Yeah, a little
situ.
bit like I said earlier,
Yeah.
like that, the power of the tool is really down to how you use it. They're all very good and they're all getting better all the time. If cost is your primary driver, obviously, if the university are providing you with one, use that. Otherwise, the other one that is, chat is less than £20 a month. And if you can't get £20 a month of value out of it, you're not trying hard enough. And otherwise, there's Google. So if you've got a Gmail account, you have access to Gemini. The free version of Gemini hoovers up all your data and is quite relatively limited. So you can buy a Google Gemini subscription. I don't know how much that is because I get it free through my Google Workspace account because I have a paid Google Workspace for the business. So I'm not quite sure, but go with the one that you've got.
She has got Copilot, and I think Copilot, it's ChatGPT, isn't it? It's a very good tool. I use both. I have Copilot at the university, so I use both tools, and I find them both very, very good.
Great. And then something that you will find useful for research purposes is this little thing here called deep research. And if you're in a Copilot world, there is a researcher agent as well. Now, because I'm screen sharing, I can't open another. Maybe I can open another tab in here. I'll open up my Copilot.
And we have a question about between ChatGPT and Perplexity, both paid versions, which one's better for academic or for doing research? So ChatGPT and Perplexity. I've never used Perplexity, so.
I'm just going to log into my Copilot so I can show you what this looks like.
Yeah.
Bear with me. Got to go to my Authenticator app. Here we go, 46. You'll get to see my secret code. There you go. I'm in. So in Copilot, you can see it looks exactly the same. You get to upload files here. And then over here, you've got agents and you've got a researcher agent. This researcher agent is exactly the same as this deep research mode in ChatGPT.
Interesting.
And when you use the research agent in Copilot or you use the research mode in ChatGPT, you're performing a very, very deep web query. And it will take about 10 minutes to answer you. So it's definitely worth spending some time getting your prompt right because it's going to lock up your system for 10 minutes. But it will come back with a 5,000 or 10,000 word report and a series of perhaps 100 or more links of sources that it's found and where it's got the data from. So it can be quite a good way of looking at doing some initial research into a new field. If you want to find what's already been published out there, or you want to find new sources of information, that can be a great way to do it. So definitely have a little look at the researcher tool in ChatGPT and in Copilot. What if you want? So imagine that you were trying to understand. You wanted to build a plan for your research. Imagine you've got a new topic or a new area that you're looking into. How might you go about building a prompt to do that? Let's have a look. So we might say something like this. For context, we might say, we want you to be a strategist and academic planning assistant. You're going to help me create a well-structured research plan for publication, funding applications, or thesis development. And then we need to give it some instructions. Generate a step-by-step research plan based on the provided topic. Include research questions, methodology, timeline, sources, literature, and expected outcomes. Make sure the plan is realistic within your time frame and avoid assuming the user has access to expensive facilities. And then you might give it some additional information for context. So that's the kind of thing you might put, that's what a good prompt starts to look like when you actually want a deep, useful, interesting outcome. So put your hand up in the chat if you've been writing prompts that are sort of quite detailed and structured like this.
I'm getting better at doing that. Because I think there's a lazy element of just saying, oh, it'll do all the thinking for me, and it just really can't.
Yeah, exactly. You have to brief it well. Imagine you were briefing the intern. What do they need to know to be able to do a good job for you?
It helps your thinking process too.
Yeah. And in fact, when I say think AI, think, actually, that thinking part at the beginning, you can only brief the AI well because you know how to do the job yourself already. People who don't know how to build a research plan will find it hard to brief the AI to make one.
We've got getting better sometimes. It's very helpful. I have not been asked to take a role, but I've given relevant info, which I read before. So I think it's a work in progress is the general vibe on chat.
Yeah.
I think it's such a richer response. First off, you get to almost where you need to be much quicker doing this. But
Yeah.
well, my caveat being the first output's never the one you use, but
Yeah, and it can be a little bit, using these tools well means at first you feel like you're going slowly. Like if you spend 5 or 10 minutes crafting a good prompt, I recommend writing them in a separate document first and then pasting them in because the chat window is tiny. Then you kind of think, God, I could be halfway through it by now if I just started writing the damn thing. But actually, what you'll find is by writing that good prompt, you'll then find you get to an output so much quicker, and you'll find that a task like this might take you half the time.
You save time at the other end. But you're right. It's because I think it's because the narrative we're given on these tools is the quick and dirty narrative, and that's actually not the outputs we're using it for.
Yeah, exactly. Like these things aren't quick. They are quicker, but they aren't quick.
Yes.
So yeah, we've talked a little bit about deep research. So deep research, for those of you that are using Gemini, it's also available in, there's a deep research functionality available in Gemini. I don't think any of you said you were using it. But yeah, ChatGPT, you can turn on deep research. Copilot, you can use the researcher agent. So what does a research prompt look like? Again, you've got to be quite specific about what kind of thing you're asking for. So tell it, I'm researching topic X, and I want you to be an expert researcher. And then how might you brief it? You might say, my hypothesis is, and explain what it is. I want you to research all the most important papers on this topic to see how they confirm or challenge my hypothesis. Only refer to academic research, provide citations for everything, emphasize where sources have different opinions. And then you might give it some existing material that you've done. So again, this is how you brief an AI to do a job well for you. You're telling it what kind of task you want it to do, you're putting some constraints around that task, and you're giving it any reference material that it's going to need. So another great tool, and I think you might have touched on this on one of the previous webinars. So again, Lucy, let me know if I can skip through this fairly quickly, is Google Notebook. And in fact, there's a version of this in Copilot as well. So I'll show you the Copilot version since I don't think many of you are using Google. The advantage of notebooks is they are not going out to the internet to look up loads of stuff. They instead are only referring to the sources that you give them. So it grounds all of its information in the data that you gave it. And that can be really important. So what can you put into a Google Notebook? And we'll have a look at a Microsoft Notebook as well. Well, anything really, reports and PDFs. You can give it website URLs. You can give it interview transcripts. You can even give it a Reddit thread or something, for some of you that might be using that kind of stuff for your research about, how are people talking about things out in the real world. You can feed these things pretty much anything that contains text or video or imagery. What does it look like? Well, let's go and have a look at a real version. Here is
what's quite interesting is Joanne covered this a little bit, as I mentioned, but I think how you use it, again, with all these tools, it's really interesting to see how you're using it. And
yeah. So here's an example of a Google Notebook. So this Google Notebook has has 15 or so blog posts in it about how marketing agencies need to position themselves. So it might not be a topic you're familiar with, but it is a topic I'm very familiar with. So on the left-hand side here, you can see that I can have all of my sources, and I can choose which sources I would like it to refer to. So I've got all of them selected at the moment. Over here on the right-hand side, you've got different ways you can interact with those sources. Do I want an audio overview? It'll create like a podcast of people talking about the themes. So you can listen to it in the car on the way home.
Yeah, we played one of those, and they're very weird, aren't they? Because they're very realistic.
Yeah. And then you can do a video overview, you can do a mind map, you can do infographics, you can do all sorts of things that can be helpful ways of interpreting your data. And of course, right here in the middle, you've got a good old chat box where you can just ask questions. So what are the most common themes that come up across these topics? Or how could I structure these topics for a presentation? Or all of that stuff. You can start chatting with it just like you would with ChatGPT or Copilot. And crucially, it will only draw the answers from here, from the sources you've given it. So if I say, what are the 3 most common themes in the blog articles, we'll chug it away. Okay, excuse me, I've got somebody looking to collect my dog for a dog walk, so I'm just going to check if my wife is available to take her out. Oh, yes, she is. Great. Phew. Okay, I don't need to leave you. So here we go. So here you can see it's pulling out the most common themes. And crucially, unlike ChatGPT, it's referencing exactly where it got each of these ideas from. Nice. Back to the source material. So here I can read that little bit of text where it got it and decide if that's correct or not. And if I really want, I can click on this, and actually it takes me right into the source document and literally highlights the paragraph for me.
Because you might create a piece of content where you want to, because if we're doing academic, we do want to be doing that referencing. This is really useful.
Yeah, for those of you that are using Copilot, you've got it exactly the same here with notebooks. This works exactly the same way. You can create a notebook, create a new notebook. Oops, there we go. You can add your sources, uploading here. You can go and find everything and interrogate it exactly the same way. So
I didn't know we had that in Copilot. That's very
useful. So Copilot has notebooks. In Google, they're called Notebook LM. So they work very, very similar way.
I love how competitive this market is. And as you say, the UX all looks so similar because nobody wants to alienate the user.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So these things all work just the same way. The technology, large language models are incredibly sophisticated bits of technology, but they're also kind of a commodity. Every company is making them work the same way. So yeah, so this ability to be able to see through to where the source was, go back and check the actual document to see if it's interpreted that source correctly is super, super powerful. So yeah, really useful tool for research. There we go. Any questions on Deep Research or Notebook LM?
We've got some appreciation about how helpful and practical this is, but we haven't got any questions. But do keep asking things.
I'm just going to check that Emma's going to take the dog out.
Yeah, go for it. You can see Jules is working in a beautiful converted church there in Bath.
Yeah. My dog gets to sit in a beautiful converted church.
Yeah.
Every day. Lucky thing. Yeah.
An amazing space. No, we have no questions, but I say if one comes to you, just pop them in chat. I'm keeping an eye.
Okay, so what we're going to look at now is how can you use these tools to help repurpose your research? So how can you make it explicable to people in different audiences? So imagine you're trying to, perhaps you're going to a conference and you're going to be talking to people who are not as specialist in your area as you are. Or perhaps you're giving a talk at a school and you need to simplify some of your work to make it so that school children can comprehend it. Well, let's have a look. What might you do? You give it some context. I want you to translate complex academic material into accessible insights for a curious, intelligent lay audience. Read the research paper provided, identify the key insights, findings, and implications, explain them in plain but precise language, highlight why it matters, connect the ideas to real-world concerns, questions, or experiences. Do not dumb down or dilute the meaning. Keep the tone informed, clear, and respectful of the reader's intelligence. Avoid technical jargon unless it's explained. And then you would give it your research paper or your abstract or whatever it might be. So, I mean, you don't need to write a prompt like this word for word the same way, but hopefully you're understanding what I mean by learning to speak AI. Giving it context about its role and what you're trying to achieve, giving it detailed instructions that explain what you want it to actually do, give it some constraints that talk about what does a good output look like, and then what information is it going to need to do the job.
And we have a question from Jasmine saying, thank you for the great session so far. A challenge I've had with research is a lot of the research, a chatbot comes up with not being of that high quality. Any tips on improving? So I think, Jasmine, I think you're talking about the prompting. So you're saying, I'm not quite sure what you mean by a chatbot coming up, but I think if the output isn't of high quality, it's probably related to the quality of the input.
Definitely. So yeah, if you're writing reasonably detailed structured prompts like the one on the screen, and you're giving it the appropriate reference material, not too much, only stuff that's directly relevant to the task that you're trying to achieve, then you'll generally find that the answers are pretty helpful. They might not always be perfect, but they'll generally be pretty helpful and get you a long way down the road.
Oh yeah, she's saying the references that come up link to articles that are not of high research quality. And that's why I'd go for SciSpace. And again, when you're in SciSpace, you can be really precise when you're prompting as to what, the age of it, the location of it, the depth, that, you can put a lot, this richness of prompting applies across most platforms. So again, in SciSpace, you can really slice that data as well to make sure you only are coming up with reference pieces which are exactly within the constraints that you need for your output.
Yeah, so if you're using it to search for sources, then I think, as Lucy says, you're probably much better off using a specialist platform for that. If you're looking to, the example we've got here is about how do you explain your ideas to people who aren't a specialist in your field. That's the kind of tool where a large language model can be very powerful. They're very good at recombining ideas in different ways and explaining them from different perspectives.
And if you had a series of maybe 6 or 8 articles which are on SciSpace, which means they've already been published, you could download those and put them into your LM, your closed space, and interrogate them in that space rather than within ChatGPT or Claude or wherever. So use all the tools. I think this is it. Jules is giving you the idea of how all these tools interact and what their strengths are. You can use more than one as part of this process.
Yeah, 100%. So you'll find, you're academic, so SciSpace will always be a helpful tool when you need to find specific papers. You'll find a chatbot like Copilot or ChatGPT will be very helpful when you're trying to just think through a problem in a different way. And you'll find a tool like Notebook in Copilot or in Google, very powerful when you want a kind of searchable repository of information.
And maybe that's a really good point, is there isn't a utopia, and that's great. They all have their own value. Yeah.
And I talked earlier about, don't just assume the first answer you get is the only answer. These tools are very interactive and they reward that conversation. So some examples of how you might follow up a question like the previous one. Imagine we've got it to draft imagine you're giving a talk at a school, and you've repurposed your research to make it accessible to an A-level student, perhaps. Then these are some ways that you could repurpose that content. What can you use it for? You could shift the kind of audience. How would I explain it to a policymaker, or to a science literate teenager, or to a business audience who perhaps you might want to invest in your research? You can reformat the kind of output. Well, what does it look like as a LinkedIn post? Or what does it look like as how can I get an attention-grabbing summary for my slide deck? Or how do I connect it to other things going on? Help me explain why this is important right now, or what might be the consequences of not doing this research, or how does it fit into the broader debate that's going on in this area? Or you might change the style or tone of it. Like, how do I make it more conversational? Or how do I make it sound like a TED talk? Or how do I reframe it to spark curiosity, or things like that? So, these tools are very, very good at helping you take an idea and then explore it in different ways. Another great way to explain concepts to people who aren't experts in your field is to use analogies. And it's an age-old storytelling technique. So how might you get Chat or Copilot to help you come up with some analogies for themes? We give it some context. You're a communicator skilled in simplifying complex ideas. Your job is to explain research clearly and engagingly to a non-expert audience using analogies and metaphors. Read the research provided and identify the core idea or mechanism being explained. Use analogies or metaphors from everyday life to describe the concept in a way that's memorable or accessible. Avoid technical jargon. Must include at least one concrete analogy or metaphor that make it easy to visualize or imagine. So again, that's the kind of way that you can use these things to make your research more accessible. And again, how might you follow that up? Some ideas for conversation starters. What would be a good visual image to describe this? How would you explain this to a 12-year-old? Give me 3 options from different domains that people can relate to. So think about, what's the output that you actually want, and use the AI to help you take it there. Through imagination you need a lot of imagination to get the most out of these tools. You've got to think what questions to ask. And then we're going to take a look now at communicating your ideas. So we're going to talk, we often work in a very text-heavy environment, but AI allows us to repurpose text into other things that perhaps can be more engaging depending on the format that you're delivering stuff in. So we've obviously got text chatbots like ChatGPT and Copilot, and we've just seen how they can be used to perhaps tell your research in the form of a story or some other relatable way that gets your idea across. We've also got tools that can create speech from text. 11 Labs is the leading one, but you could if you got ChatGPT to turn your research into a relatable story, and then you got David Attenborough to read it out for you using 11 Labs, that's one way that you could do these things. Actually, generally, I wouldn't say try and imitate a real person, but yeah, certainly you can use these things so that people can listen to it, and perhaps then people can listen to it in the car or find other ways. Audiobooks are super popular, right?
People consume data in lots of ways, don't they? And this just allows you to play with that.
Yeah. My wife is heavily dyslexic and finds very long text documents very hard to digest. So she puts everything into a little app on her phone called Speechify that then reads it to her. She finds it much, much easier to digest complex information that way.
We love audiobooks. A lot of us, if we're traveling, I'm about to get a train to London, I'm going to have an audiobook. I think it's just a really good way to digest data.
Yeah, images. So infographics can be a very powerful way of getting concepts across. We're going to look at it in a moment. Google Gemini have just launched Gemini 3. It's probably the best at doing this right now. But other tools like ChatGPT can also have a pretty good go at it. But infographics are great. Video, somebody mentioned they'd been using Synthesia. Again, you could have a virtual person perhaps explain your idea. And you've now got tools that can build a website for you just without you having to be a programmer. Lovable is one of the most popular ones. So perhaps you could explain your idea through some sort of interactive website or a sort of game that people play to explore the concept, to explore perhaps the trade-offs that your research has highlighted. So there are lots of different ways you can use these things to bring your research to life now and tell an engaging story to people who aren't specialists in your field. So one example I was looking at was like generating a conference poster. And actually it's interesting. We'll see how far the technology has moved on in the 6 months since I last gave this presentation. So I made up a research topic. So back in the day, I did biological anthropology. So I used to do a lot around human evolution. And I looked at some recent stories in the news that related to human evolution. And somebody found a Denisovian jawbone in Taiwan. So Denisovians were a type of modern human that existed 100, 200,000 years ago. So guess what? They found a Penghu 1 lower jaw pulled up years ago by fishermen in the Taiwan Strait. So there we go. So how could you create a poster or something similar for that? Well, you can put literally in ChatGPT, I said, generate an infographic of this. What did it create? It created me a little poster like this. Why it's hot right now, what the jaw adds, and why it matters beyond academia. So that was in June 2025. I think if we did that again today using Google 3, it would do probably a much better poster. But there you go. You can use these tools to create useful, creative outputs for you. How are we doing, everyone?
I think it gives you ideas, even if you if you didn't like that image, you're still going to go, okay, I don't like it because of this, because of this. I think a lot of people struggle with the blank page. That's what I find is so useful visually as well as with language with these tools. It's like using Canva, for example, to create images. You can then start tweaking it. So someone said, can you try the poster using Google? I guess, can Google do infographics as well?
Yeah, so in fact, Gemini 3 is very, very good at infographics. So I'd say that's a pretty good one to look at.
I think having a play with these tools, definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, somebody said, could you show it using Gemini 3? So should we do that? Should we actually just have a quick go? You're
feeling brave now because the tech's been kind. Come on, let's do this.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll share my screen one more time.
Cool.
Here we go. We'll jump over to. Here we go. Now the Zoom toolbar is in the way of my menu. Let's find it. There, Google Gemini. Here we go. Okay. So what we're going to do? Let's go in Google Gemini. We're going to go find the latest news stories related to human evolution and fossil finds. Here we go. So we're just using the fast model here. We'll do it. Again, you've got the choice of fast and thinking with Gemini as well. We're going to get it to do thinking because that will make it actually go out to the internet. I love the little summaries you get. Investigating human origins. There you go. That's somebody's entire life right there. So you can see that these thinking models take a little bit of time to come back to you, but it's well worth turning them on. So here we go. So here's some. It's giving me a summary of some of the latest developments in human evolution. Here we go. This is the same discovery we were talking about here. I think the Denisovian discovery in Taiwan, Neanderthals and interbreeding, Denisovian rib bones, those Denisovians, they're up to all sorts of stuff. Okay, so I'm going to refer to story 4 there. We'll keep sticking to our Denisovians and generate me an infographic. In fact, so tools, actually, what I'm going to do, you can see you can create images as part of the tool. So we'll turn that on. Generate an infographic of story 4. We're going to give it a bit of context. You're an expert storyteller and academic artist. Ooh, generate me an infographic of story 4. The graphic should create an eye-catching opening slide for my presentation at a conference. It should communicate the key concepts in a visually engaging way. Great, let's fire it off. It's quite good with typos, don't worry too much. And then it's loading Nano Banana Pro. So Nano Banana Pro is Google's latest image model. It's probably the best out there right now. And let's see, we've got a few minutes left on our webinar, so it might take a minute or two to generate this, but let's see what we get. Everyone's waiting with bated breath. Are you on the edge of your seat, Lucy? I'm on the edge of mine.
Absolutely. I can barely contain my excitement. Verifying image here. Oh my gosh, that was quick.
Look at that. So you can see these things have come a long way. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to download that so that I can open it full size and we can have a look at what's actually going on. Downloading.
And again, you could go into who the audience was for, who it was for. As you say, is it for school children? Is it for fellow academics? Whatever it might be.
There we go. So here we go. It's put in the location at the Bashir Karst Cave. Karst is a form of limestone. There we go. It's showing that Denisovians and modern humans may have had a potential overlap. We've got the first rib bone confirmed 48,000 years ago before the present. And previously, we'd only found teeth and jaw fragments. And this new discovery is postcranial evidence of longer survival rates. So wow. There you go. So that's an example of, so you can see actually it's come on quite a bit in the last few months.
Yeah, I've not used Nano Banana Pro. I'm definitely have a play in Gemini.
Good question there we've got. Does Gemini have, yeah, does Gemini, sorry, I've got the chat up now.
Okay, cool.
I've got it open. Does Gemini have features similar to the projects function of GPT? Yes, it does. So in Gemini, they're called gems. So here you go. You can, on your sidebar, so you've got to open up your sidebar. You've got to go explore gems. And then over here, you can create a new gem. And Perfect. Here you go. You can give your gem a name. You can upload some documents to it. There you go. And you can use it just the same way as a project in ChatGPT. It works the same way as a project or a custom GPT. They're kind of all called gems in Gemini.
Oh.
So that's how you do that.
Brilliant. Oh, so useful, Jules. Because I do get lazy with tools, and I know that if I take the time to plan, it'll always be a better output. And then you get really frustrated when you get garbage out because you put garbage in. So very, very useful. As we wrap up, do we have any more questions? And a couple of people have asked about the recording. Well, I'll pop this on YouTube tomorrow because there's a lot of information to take in. So then you can watch it back.
Oh, I'm really pleased to see that lots of you have found it useful. So thanks for staying tuned for the last hour and 20 minutes. Hopefully you can take some of those things away and get a lot of value out of them for your own research.
Everyone's just going to go away and create images now. That's what we all want to do. Cool.